Hey everybody, just doing a video here, and you just watched my other video. See, I kind of gave you a heads up to what I want to talk about right here. This was going to be a little bit more about inflation and the CPI. Now, I'm not a financial expert, tax attorney, or nothing like that. I'm just some bearded dude that spend a lot of time reading, watching videos, just learning the hard way year over year. And hopefully you're somebody that's decades younger than me that can actually kind of put some of this stuff into work, today, so that way decades from now you be in a lot better situation. And I was fortunate enough to kind of learn some of this stuff, not when I was young, but still, young enough where now that I'm in my later half of my mid 50s, been able to kind of take advantage of that. Not completely retired, but I was able to get into the position where I can kind of step away from, having to do the 9 to 5 or, the 12-hour shifts type of thing, and kind of create things that I enjoy to do. That I enjoy, going to the auctions, and as you can see, I got, toys and stuff all over the place. Yeah, I'm 50 something and still buying and toys and messing around with antiques, buying and selling antiques, and some gold and silver, just all kinds of stuff. I like going out there. You never know what you're going to see. Estate sales, flea markets, auctions. It's pretty cool. And right now that's basically what I've been doing for a living. And I don't know how many hours I put into it, because I also do, been doing some different things on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and all kinds of stuff. So, and also a couple other things I'm working on. Anyways, we're getting sidetracked from what this video is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about the inflation, and CPI, and how to help mitigate some of the some of the daily expenses that you see, because a lot of times people, prices of groceries, prices of all kinds of stuff, as people have seen over the last handful of years, they're going up, and they'll kind of stop, maybe go down, then go back up, and kind of zigzag. But so with the inflation thing, and this isn't really like a big conspiracy, because they come out and make these monthly announcements. The guy, whoever is doing the Federal Reserve now, used to be Jerome Powell. I haven't been keeping up with it right now, because so I don't know who the Federal Reserve president is currently, but I know it used to be Jerome Powell, but somebody else. No disrespect, but I just really haven't been keeping up with that. And that's one of those things, is to position, if you position yourself in certain ways, there's certain things that no longer become that big of an issue, in your life. And these days, some of these issues that are out there, causing a lot of people to get emotional, irrational about some things. And so anyways, yeah, there I go, getting sidetracked again. Back to the inflation thing. So the Federal Reserve, they come out and they tell you that they try to keep it around 2%. And I seen over the years, especially after COVID, when a lot of the prices, eggs and bread and all these things, all of a sudden prices, spiked up. They come out, Eggs might have went up like 20%. I think some places it was higher, some places not as high. Bread, all these things. The prices spiked up. They come back down, and then they go back up. But anyways, so in a nutshell, they're telling you they want to try to keep a control mechanism on how much those prices go up, right? It's 2%. That's what they tell you. They want to try to get the inflation numbers back down to 2%, the CPI, all these things that now everybody, once again, I don't know if it's currently, but over the last few years, all of a sudden I've seen all kinds of people now talking about it. Now, all of a sudden, everybody knows about inflation. Everybody knows about CPI. Whenever the end of COVID came, years prior to that, like nobody knew this stuff. And so prior to the COVID, you asked your normal person about inflation or CPI, and they're like, huh? Are you from a different country or a different planet? Like, but then all of a sudden it started getting a hot topic. Why is that? Because at 2%, people really ain't paying too much attention to what's going on. It's enough for them to kind of keep you, in a little bit of a hole, but not enough where all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm in a hole because these prices have shot up 6, 7, 10, 15%. All of a sudden, you start getting moves like that. That's when all of a sudden people are like, whoa, wait a minute. So at 2%, they can just kind of milk you. Kind of sometimes people call it a hidden tax. So anyways, they already tell you what the goal is, 2%. So if you have a checking account that people have, I got a special checking account that pays so-and-so percent or so special savings account. Yeah, whatever. APY, annual percentage yield, they're going to pay you that 3 or 4%, but then you have to divide it by 12. So you ain't getting paid nothing, especially if you figure in 2% year over year. That's a minimum. That's what their goal is, 2%, and it's higher. So at 2%, if you got, keep it nice and simple, $100 in a checking account with none of that fancy stuff, it's just going to be $100, no sort of microscopic, percentage yields or anything like that. So 1 year, that $100 sits in your checking account. Your purchasing power is going to be diminished by 2%. So you're going to be able to buy less year over year. And so your $100 will now buy you $98 worth of stuff. And they're telling you this. They want 2%. They want you to be slightly milked year over year. Now, when it goes from 2 to 4%, and never mind all the other numbers that it went up to, 7, 10%, whatever. So it starts catching on to people when there's a huge spike in these movements from 2 to 4. That's a doubling. So when something doubles, that's 100%. So from 2 to 4, that's 100% increase. If you go from $1 to $2, you just now doubled your money. What's that mean? That means you just made 100% on your $1 return. Same thing, 2 to 4. It's 100%. So when these numbers start going in not quite hyperbolic percentage moves, all of a sudden it's a big shock to people. Like, whoa, wait a minute, what's going on? So once you start going from 2 to 4, you get a doubling, tripling, quadrupling, and so on. And that's when, all of a sudden there's a big shock. Oh, we need to get things back under control and stuff like that. So, always keep that in mind, especially if you're out there working, trying to save. If you can save, that's great. Make sure you're trying to get, if you get 2% on your money, you're basically breaking even. Now, I know it's difficult to find places that are going to, you're going to be able to get 4% or higher, but, and I'm no sort of financial expert, no sort of financial advice. You have to kind of do a little bit of work and looking around. So if you can find something that's going to pay you 4%, so now you're ahead of the game 2%. So instead of getting milked a little bit, you're actually, making a little bit, year over year. The same thing. And I started doing this years ago, was looking at my yearly, my double W-2s, my tax returns, and seeing what I made for the year. And a lot of times you can even check this, monthly is kind of, it's a little much, but every time, and probably around July or August, I would look at my W-2 and compare it to last year's amount and see where I'm at halfway through the year. And sometimes maybe I would try to get like a couple days of overtime or something like that, because the same concept, year over year, if you made the same amount of money that you did last year on your W-2, your taxes, well, guess what? Well, yeah, you're behind 2%. Okay, never mind if the next year you made the same amount of money. Well, now you're behind another 2%. So, if you can work some overtime, get a little bit of raise, different position, all kinds of different things to really look for and focus on. Because if whatever the average is these days, I'll just say $50,000 for like, one person. I'm not even sure if I'm high or low on that number these days, but at $50,000, if you're making $50,000 a year, and the next year you're making 50,000, you made 50,000 again. Well, yeah, you're already behind at least 2%, because that's what they want to keep it at, 2%. So you're already behind 2%, and it could be even more. So always try to make sure that, okay, I made 50,000 this year, what's at least 2% more. $1,300-ish. So you want to try to double that. So you want to try to make sure that, if you make 50,000 one year, the next year you want to make sure you're trying to get at least 53,000. That's going to kind of at least keep you at some sort of, level mark, instead of getting, continuously buried. If you can get, more than that percentage year over year, then you're on the right track. But always kind of stay focused on what they're telling you. And once again, this is one of those tricks. They tell you what's going on. Now it's up to you if you're going to listen to what's going on and do something about it. A lot of people, they don't. So, and whose fault is that? The people that are telling you, or the person that's not taking action? I don't want to get into that whole ball of wax right now, but so always pay attention to these type of numbers, and some other ways to kind of another way to help offset this is also pay attention to where and yeah, basically where your money's going. And by that I mean, where are you spending most of your money? Yeah, there's some things that you really can't do anything about, probably like your mortgage and your house, but maybe you're paying that to a specific company that's traded on the stock market. Or where do you go grocery shopping? Food Lion, Piggly Wiggly's, Walmart's, Harris Teeter, all, most of your companies, they're either going to be traded on the stock market or they're going to be owned by a company that's traded on the stock market. And this is pretty easy stuff to just do a little bit of research. And I'm not saying like you need to learn how to read charts and all these different things and earnings and EPS and all these types of things. And I think it was Warren Buffett said it one time was, basically just buy what you like or buy what you use. So where are you doing your shopping? If you're going to Walmart, you know what? Every once in a while, you get a little bit of extra money, buy a Walmart share. Buy a couple over the year. It's not. Yeah, you're gonna be like, oh well, a lot of people will come up with 1,000,001 excuses about, oh well, the dividend I get isn't anything, or this and that. It's about compounding, or another way to put it, and I'll get into this in another video, is about how to basically hedge or leverage certain things and try to implement those two strategies into a lot of things in your personal life. And so even though it's not going to make a huge impact, when it comes time to the inflation, okay, inflation, CPI, means is your cost of goods. Your cost of goods are going up. So when cost of goods are going up, who benefits from that? Companies, because they're not going to be selling things at a loss. They're still in a business of making a profit. So if a company is making a profit and prices are going up, they're going to continue to pay dividends, and they're still going to, most of the time what happens is they increase their dividends. In a lot of places they'll pay out quarterly, every 3 months. Some places you can get a little bit different payouts. But basically, so as your inflation, your CPI, your cost of goods is going up, and if you're a shareholder, you're a part of that that company, well, you're getting money back. And one way that I used to look at this is like I also would buy shares in a gas station. A gas station that you go to like every week, or depending on how much you drive, every other week or whatever. If you're going to that same place, buy some shares of that company, because they're going to pay you back every 3 months. Okay, and it got to a point where I was able to build up enough shares of basically a gas oil company that would pay me back every month, which would be basically almost a full tank of gas. And that might not be a lot, that's not life-changing money, but a couple times a year these things add up. So and then all of a sudden you start looking at, okay, where am I buying my food at? You know, prices go up at the food market, prices go up at the gas station. Okay, yeah, it's a pain in the butt. Yeah, I gotta pay some more. But you know what's gonna happen is I'm also gonna get some more. They're also gonna, you know, pay me out dividends every 3 months. And that's just one way. Years ago I started, it finally, it just dawned on me, there's no rocket scientist. It was just, you know, people have been talking about this for years, and for me, it just dawned on me one day, and I was like, holy cow, why haven't I been doing this sooner? Started this sooner. And the sooner you get started on it, the better off you are. Just buy, you know, 1 or 2 shares of a gas company, or gas, you know, company that owns the gas stations, where you're buying your groceries or anything like that. Just look, see what they're paying a dividend. It's not going to be life changing, but neither is 2%, like the inflation. And try to keep it low so it's not life changing where people realize it, but it's enough to make an impact year over year, slow enough where people don't see it. Now if you flip it and go the other way with it, okay, how can I get at least 2% or more where I'm not getting buried, I'm not crushed? Because that's what a lot of people say. You go to a grocery store, people feel, oh, I'm getting buried, I'm getting crushed. Well, yeah, that's the way it's designed. And we can get into being intentional or whatever, but they are telling you, and it's up to you to make the choice. Make a choice on what you want to do, because there are things for you to do to, you know, not feel so crushed all the time. And it's a good way to just kind of, you know, start building. And in the long run, that would also help with, you know, once you finally get to Social Security age, getting into Social Security, because that's not designed to be your whole nest egg. That's a supplemental and additional thing to whatever else you have. There used to be a pension. People don't have that pretty much anymore. So either you're going to have some sort of savings in cash, which is a terrible idea, because once again, you're going to get buried by that 2% year over year. And like I said, sometimes it's more. Some sort of, you know, stock market, Roth IRA, 401k, something, and some sort of additional investment strategies, because some of your 401ks, you're limited on the things that you can invest in. And then also trying to get the money out of your 401ks, you got to be certain ages, blah blah blah. But if you can open up just a individual brokerage account somewhere, or you can just start investing in individual companies, the places that you go every couple days, every week, that are paying dividends. Just try to put a little bit of money in there as you can. And once again, just like that 2%, that is not that big of a deal for people to notice, but until it starts getting real big, at first it's not going to be noticeable, but then all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh man, now I can buy a tank full of gas of what I'm getting back. Oh, now I can, you know, I got enough money where it's going to buy a couple meals, you know, help offset my grocery expenses and stuff like that. So it's just some different ways to kind of look at things. And yeah, it's one of those things. The sooner you can get started on it, the better, because hopefully, you know, there's some young people that will kind of click onto this video and watch this here and kind of start getting on the bandwagon, understanding what's going on. This is just going to help you down the road. Later in life, it's a little bit more difficult because the same thing. Unless you got a big chunk of money to put in somewhere, it's not gonna really see any sort of immediate returns off of it. But yeah, if you're still watching, this is long-winded, 25 minutes. Ooh wee, man. Yeah, go ahead, like, subscribe. Should have said this earlier in the video because probably most of you are gone. But if you're still here, yeah, drop a comment. Be like, I'm here. I understand what's going on. Or even if you don't understand what's going on, if I lost you somewhere, drop a comment down below. Be like, hey, can you say such and such part, or yeah, drop a comment and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. And I'm gonna do a couple more videos along these types of different strategies and ideas on some things that have helped me out over the years, and hopefully they'll help other people out in the long run also. All right, see you all later.